Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we fill up some raised garden beds. So let's go. We are on the south side of my house, and as you can see, I have 5 raised beds here. I bought these raised beds, I think about 3 years ago from Gardener's Supply. I actually went to the store in Vermont and they were marked down end of the season, so I got a great deal on them. And I placed these beds here because in this area they get full sun, and I figured it's a perfect place for them. When it came to filling the beds, I did not want to spend a lot of money because it can get very pricey when it comes to filling up raised beds with organic material, with soil, whatever it is that you want to fill them with. So that first year, what I did was I put down some sticks, some twigs, some very small logs in the very bottom of them. And then I started adding shredded leaves, grass clippings, shredded leaves, grass clippings, and I basically made a lasagna layer. And I also used some used potting mix. And I filled them to the very top. And I did that during the fall time, and they sat during the winter months. Last spring was my first spring with being able to plant these up. And I made a video showing you how I was topping off my beds. And I'll put a link to that video down in the description below. But I basically did a mix of some raised bed mix that I bought from a big box store. It was marked down. I don't remember how much it was. It was like $1 a bag. So I thought that's a great deal. So I bought a bunch of those bags, and I also bought some compost. And I mixed both of those up, and that's how I topped my beds off last year. Now keep in mind, anytime you top off raised beds with material like shredded leaves or grass clippings, nice rich organic material, it's going to break down, and that's a good thing. But as it breaks down, that's going to bring down the level of your beds. So as you can see, and I'll take you in for a closer look, these beds have definitely dropped in level. And what I did last year was I had put strawberry plants in these beds as well as blueberries and even raspberries. And what I want to do this year is top off 2 of the beds that are empty. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that this year. And after I top them off, we're going to be moving all of these plants into the new beds. So come on in for a closer look and let me show you what the beds look like right now. We're going to start with this bed over here. You can see it has a beautiful blueberry bush, and it's all leafed out, and it's even starting to bud up. And at the base of this blueberry bush are a bunch of strawberry plants that I actually started from seed. I think it's been 3 years now. And they produce the little teeny tiny strawberries all season long from spring through the fall time. I believe they're called everbearing. And as we move along in this bed, you can see that there's another blueberry bush here. And you can see here that it actually heaved itself a little bit out of the soil. But fortunately, it's still alive. And as we continue along, there is a third blueberry bush over here. So we'll be removing the 3 blueberry bushes as well as all the strawberry plants in here. And the reason is we want to be able to top this bed off, and we'll be moving all of these into a new bed that we will be topping off together. Here's a second bed that also has a blueberry bush and same type of strawberries at the base. So it's a great time for us to just be doing this project. You can see that these beds will benefit from being topped off. And there's also a blueberry bush here, and there's a teeny tiny blueberry bush in the center. So it doesn't look great, but it is still alive. And then in this third bed, more strawberries, but I can tell you that these strawberries are a larger size strawberry, and they don't bloom all season long. They basically do one big huge flush of strawberries, and they might have another flush later in the season, but they're the nice bigger size strawberries. I don't know the variety. And also in this bed are some raspberries, and I'm pretty sure the raspberries I got from Sam's Club, and they're the type that you could put in a pot if you wanted to. And I haven't done any pruning, any cleaning up, so probably today we'll be tackling that. And right over here, these are 2 beds that are empty. Last year, we had planted some snapdragons, some alyssum, we had ranunculus in there, and that's why they're empty right now, because they just had mostly annuals in there, which is actually perfect. So these are great beds for us to at least clean up for today, get them topped off, and then start moving plants into them. Don't mind the mess. It's definitely messy in this area. I have a lot of winter sowing milk jugs over here, and you will always see brush piles in my yard. As soon as I burn them, we have more brush piles because we do live in the woods, so we're always collecting sticks. But I did start gathering some supplies over here, and I'll go over some of my supplies in a little bit. So what I'm thinking is this bed right over here, we will end up topping off and we will put some blueberry plants in there as well as the strawberries that are the smaller size strawberries. And then what I'm thinking is in this center bed here, this is where the larger size strawberries will go, as well as the raspberries. That's at least my initial plan for this project, but as you know with projects, things can change, and as they do, I'll bring you along. Step one is just to remove these couple of weeds that are in here. Fortunately, there are not a lot of weeds in these beds, which makes it a lot easier. And, you know, I love free plants, and I was looking in here. I'm almost positive some of the snapdragons that were in these beds, as well as some of the alyssum, are just starting to sprout. But, you know, sometimes you can't wait. I really need to work on this project, and it's just time for us to fill these beds up. And fortunately, I already have those plants started from seeds indoors, so I'm not too worried about it. And fortunately, in this bed as well, I am very happy to say there's really no weeds. So I'm just going to take the few small ones that I see. And you can see that there is quite a bit of level here that we need to top off. So it's a great time for us to tackle this. Okay, now we are over still on the south side, very close to where the raised beds are. And over here is my compost area. Under this tarp here, this is finished compost from last year. We're going to be taking from that. And then over here, these are just a bunch of bins of material that were collected last year. Shredded leaves, grass clippings, debris from plants that I cut down, vegetable scraps. In a different video, I'll be showing you my process for taking everything out of these bins and basically mixing them together and getting them heated up to make compost for this year. But for today, let's go ahead and grab some compost from this pile. The reason I like to cover my compost pile is so it doesn't get too wet. And also, I just want to keep any weed seeds from not blowing into my pile. But I'm glad to be using this up. It's great material to fill the raised beds with. And also, I need space for building a new pile for this year. Well, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know I'm all about trying to save money and garden on a budget. And I want to show you, basically, this is compost that I made. And look at it, it's like black gold. And that alone is worth itself in gold, making your own compost. And so I don't want to put 100% compost in my raised beds. I mean, this is so nutrient rich and it's great to have, but it doesn't need to be filled in that whole entire bed. Now, the strawberries don't have a deep root system, and that's something to consider. What am I planting in the beds and how deep are the roots? However, I know that the blueberries are a little bit deeper when it comes to the roots. And also, since the beds don't need to be topped off that much, I definitely want to have a nice mixture of this compost in the top layer of my bed. So I'm going to mix the compost with something, and I'm basically going to be using materials that I already have on hand. Now, if I had nothing on hand, then I would buy something like a pro mix or some sort of a potting mix, something that's lighter, because this is pretty, you know, it's fluffy, but it's a little on the heavier side. So I need something to offset it, something a little bit lighter. And optimally, it's something that's going to drain well. It could be mixed with perlite. It needs to have something like either cocoa coir or peat moss. And so what I'm planning to do, and this is my experiment for this year, and we're going to see how it does, but I feel confident it should be okay, is I'm going to use ingredients that I already have on hand to mix with my compost. So the first ingredient we're going to use is just the remaining seed starting mix that I have left over from the season. And all that's in the seed starting mix is peat moss, there's vermiculite, and just a tiny bit of dolomite lime to offset the pH of the peat moss. So we're just going to dump that in here. And how great is that? I can finally use this again. And in here, this was basically potting mix that I had made. And the base is peat moss, and then there's also some perlite in here. And again, a little bit of the dolomite lime. So we're just going to dump this out and use this up. Boy, it feels so good to clean my house between getting rid of all the plants that I started from seed and hardening those off, coupled with just emptying all these containers and pots. It's a great feeling. And I know I'm putting them to good use. At this point, I would say it's not quite a 50-50 blend, but let's go ahead and mix this up. And I feel strongly that, you know, it doesn't, when it comes to making your own mix for a lot of things, be it seed starting mix, potting mix, raised garden mix, it needs to be something that um, basically is nutrient rich, that can hold water, but not hold too much water. And the compost is the key. At this point, I want to make sure there's some good compost mixed in with all of this other stuff. I do like having the perlite in here because the perlite helps drain the water. I'm just breaking up a little bit of the leaves that are in here, and there are some sticks that didn't break down, so we're going to take those out. I'm just squeezing it. I'm just looking to see the consistency, how everything feels. And I'm going to add a little bit more material. I'm going to show you what I'm going to add to this. This right here is basically a type of potting mix. I have a friend that works at a nursery, and they often receive samples of different potting mix. And for whatever reason, if they don't want to use it anymore, they end up putting it in a big, huge compost pile. So they were generous enough to give me a bunch of this potting mix that they didn't want anymore. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, I used it for my winter sowing during this past winter, and I still have a ton of it left. So I'm going to add a little bit of this into that mixture there because why not? Again, from what I'm just by looking at it, it definitely has peat moss. It looks like it has a tiny bit of perlite in there and a little bit more, I'd say, chunks of, it looks like just bigger chunks of peat moss. What I'll do is I'll just take a handful and show you what it looks like. And that's what that looks like. Perfectly fine to mix into what we have over here. I'm all about experimenting because I feel like when it comes to gardening, there's not usually a one way only to do a lot of things. And I tried to show that this winter when I started seeds indoors. And I tried to show that you don't have to buy your own seed starting mix. You can make your own. And it really worked out well for me. And so I feel confident this will work out well for me too. A lot of times people ask me what's the exact formula that I'm using. And we'll find out together how this does. You can see it's a mixture of a lot of good stuff. All right, I'd say this is good enough. Let's go ahead and start filling up the raised bed. Even if it doesn't fill it to the top, it's a good start. Isn't that amazing? We are almost done actually topping off this one bed. So what I'm going to continue doing is I'm going to make more mixture like I showed you here. And I am then just going to top off the rest of this bed. I really want it almost to the top. And after I'm done with this bed, I'm going to do the same process and I'm going to top off that bed over there. And after that, I will show you how they look. And then we will tackle moving some of the blueberry and strawberry plants. While I was out here filling up these beds, I was thinking about some things I wanted to make sure I shared with you. The first thing is you absolutely do not need raised beds in order to garden. All you need is a place that gets full sun, especially for most vegetables, especially when we're talking about blueberries and strawberries. And when it comes to strawberries, just start with a few strawberries. Over time, those strawberries will multiply and you will have a ton of strawberries. And, that's my goal is I want each and every one of you to just get out there and garden. And I make these videos just to show you my process and how, what I'm doing, why I'm doing something the way I'm doing it. But ultimately, I want to see each of you just get out there and gardening. So when I was digging my compost, I was noticing that, there was a little bit of sand in there. And I remembered that since I make my compost on the ground, on the soil, as I mix that compost pile over time and heat it up and all that, I'm taking some of the earth and some of the sand and everything that is down, on the ground. And that also gets mixed into my compost pile. And that's actually a good thing because when I was doing some research and looking at videos on, how to make your own mix to fill a raised bed, a lot of times you'll see that they say like use some sort of maybe used potting mix, use some compost, but then they also say take some of your own earth, some of your own soil and mix that in. So in essence, I am kind of doing that because that gets mixed in with my compost pile. And also when I was digging the compost, it's definitely pretty heavy. So I'm glad to lighten up the compost with this material here, you know, with the peat moss and the perlite and things like that. Another important thing, make sure if you're going to use compost that you're not using fresh compost. It needs to be aged compost because if you use fresh compost, you're apt to burn your plants and the plants might die. So don't just go out there and get like cow manure or horse manure that's fresh and throw it on your raised bed and then plant your plants in there. It will not be good for your plants and your plants will not be happy. So just keep that in mind. In terms of topping off the beds, you'll notice that they are much better than they were before, but I did not top them off 100%. And part of the reason is I'm going to be moving plants into these beds, and those plants might have some dirt coming with them. And another reason is when it rains, I want to make sure that the rain just doesn't wash off the top. And also, I may be putting drip irrigation in these beds. I'm not quite sure yet. I may be putting some sort of a mulch layer on here just to keep, you know, the soil cool and wet. So I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with that. So I didn't want to top these off 100%, but I'm very happy with the level that they did get topped off. And then the final thing I wanted to share was when it comes to things like blueberries and strawberries, check Facebook Marketplace because a lot of times people are thinning out their strawberry plants. They have too many and you might be able to get them for free or at a very low cost. And the same applies with blueberries. A lot of times people have tons of blueberries or they take cuttings off their blueberries and they propagate more blueberries that way. So it's a great way to just buy those plants without spending a lot of money. So what I thought we'd do next is let's go ahead and dig out a blueberry plant and I'll just show you my process for digging that out and transplanting it and then giving it some fertilizer. And if it needs to be trimmed up a little bit, we might as well tackle that as well. So we're going to start with digging up this blueberry plant right over there. And I will show you my process for getting that moved over to that bed over there. You'll notice that the plant is slightly heaved out of the soil here, but at least it's still okay. It looks great. And in terms of when is the best time to move blueberries and strawberries, it really depends and it's going to vary. But for me here right now is the best time. I didn't have time a few weeks ago and I have time today. So it is a good time for me to do this and the plant will be fine as long as I give it plenty of water. So what we're going to do now is let's just go ahead and actually remove this grass, and there's some grass on this side as well. Now I wouldn't want to be doing this if it was a super hot day, but today the high is about 55 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it's a good day for me to be doing this project. So let's go ahead and bring this blueberry plant to our new bed and I'll start pruning it and I'll show you my process for that. At this point, all I'm doing is I'm looking for any growth that is not green, pieces that are just old and they're not doing anything to help the plant out. They're just dead pieces. And I want to cut those out very carefully. So a piece like this, you can see there is no green growth on there. That's a good piece that I want to cut off. Right here, there's some green, but on this end right here, there's nothing going on. So I'm going to cut that off. And I'm just looking a lot of times like on the tips, the tips are dead. So it's just a matter of cleaning the plant up and looking for any dead pieces. It probably would have been a good time to do this before the leaves really started growing. But again, I didn't get to it. So better late than never is the way I look at it. And actually, this plant is in pretty good shape in terms of pruning. I could skip this stuff if I wanted to for this year. But you don't want to just skip the step every single year because eventually what will happen is you'll have a blueberry bush that has a lot of old dead pieces in there, and that's not good. And I'm okay doing this with the roots exposed, again, because it's not too hot out right now. But if it was a hot day, it probably would not be a good task to have the roots exposed for this long of a period. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and plant the blueberry bush and we're going to give it some fertilizer and water. We're going to be planting the blueberry bushes similar to how they were placed in the other raised bed. We'll have one on this side, we'll have one on this side, and then we'll have one in the center. When it comes to planting depth, we're going to have it as deep as it was in the other bed. So basically the soil level should be right here at the base. I'm just going to add a little bit of water in the planting hole. That looks like a good depth right there. So we're going to backfill. We want to make sure we push down, backfill some more, push down. Perfect. So now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it some fertilizer. I have a ton of hollytone on hand, and I had bought it on sale. I have a lot of it. And actually, this is really good for my blueberries as well as strawberries. Even though you read the label down here and it only lists a few plants, if you look on the side of the bag, there's actually a huge list of different plants that can benefit from this type of fertilizer. And on there are blueberries, strawberries, as well as raspberries. And I'm going to sprinkle it around the plant, but it's very important not to sprinkle it right up to the base of the plant. And I'm not measuring it. I'm just giving it what I feel is enough. And at this point, I'm just going to move it around in the soil ever so gently, just to mix it in. And then water it in. And there we go. One plant is in, which is super exciting. The next thing I want to show you is my process for just transplanting a strawberry plant. It's actually very simple, but there are some important things to look for. So let's go ahead and dig one of these up. So again, these strawberry plants are at least, I want to say 3 or 4 years old. I started them from seed way back when, and they have multiplied over time. So what we're going to do is just use a small hand shovel in this case, and we're going to dig a plant up. And that's what the plant looks like. Let's go to the other bed and I can show you a close-up of this plant and what I'm going to do with it. Strawberries are excellent. They produce runners and you end up with a ton of plants. You really only have to buy them one time and then you end up with a lot of plants. So the first thing I actually want to do is just pull apart some of the small little baby strawberry plants. So I'm basically dividing my plant. So there's one plant right there. There's another plant. So we have 2 so far. Okay, there's a third, and there's a fourth. So that's amazing, just from this one plant, which was probably last year's plant. It has blossoms on it. We ended up turning that into, looks like a total of 5 plants. And some of these may bloom this year, some may not. We'll have to find out over time. So at this point, what I like to do is remove any of the material from last year. And I'm just using hand pruners, and I'm just cutting those off. Now, the strawberry plant would be fine if I didn't do this, but aesthetically it looks nice too, just to clean it up. And now it's all cleaned up. You can see that it's all fresh, nice growth on there only. When it comes to the planting depth of your strawberry, that is very, very important. You want to make sure you only are planting it up to the crown part of it. You don't want to plant too deep because if you do that, your strawberry could rot and die. So make sure that, obviously all the roots are under the soil level, but make sure you don't plant the crown, which is the base part, too deep because you want your strawberry plant to thrive and do well. Let's go ahead and dig our hole, put the roots in, and again, I'm making sure that the crown part of the plant is at soil level, not below soil level. And now we can backfill. And it's really that simple. Okay, I have my work cut out for me. All the strawberries and blueberries from this bed are going to get moved to this bed. And when I'm done, I'll show you what it looks like. But I have to tell you something. The black flies are as thick can be. They are awful. Do you get black flies? I need to know. They are terrible. So you don't want to see me with the bug net while I'm doing this project. So I will turn the video off and I will get this project done. But you better believe that bug net is coming on. I'll show you what everything looks like when I'm all done. So you remember I told you that we'll see how far we get today? Well, we did a lot, but I didn't do as much as I had planned. And that's the reality of gardening. It's totally fine. I'm happy that this project has started and I wanted to share the progress with you and basically tell you the plan of what I plan to do over the next 1 to 2 days, hopefully, to complete this project. So let me take you in for a closer look to show you a few of these beds here. I wore the insect netting, and honestly, it was just way too much. Those black flies got the best of me, but I tried. So around here, you can see I dug up and divided a bunch of the strawberries. I got thinking about the name. I'm almost sure that they are an alpine strawberry, but they're a very nice small little strawberry. I think they're ever bearing, and my plan is to come in and keep digging and dividing them from the other bed and moving them along here. But you can see I did get the two small pieces of blueberries dug up from the other bed. I cleaned them up. And also over here, this blueberry plant also got dug up and got cleaned up. Everything has received fertilizer. In fact, while I was at it, I put fertilizer all throughout the whole bed, which makes sense because all of those little strawberry plants are going to get planted in here. So the strawberry plants as well as the blueberry plants will take full advantage of the fertilizer. And then after that, what I did was I just watered everything really well. And in this bed here, you can see the blueberry plant has been removed. I also came in and I just started removing some of the leaf litter just to expose the strawberries. And I think the reality is, but I'll find out as I get more into this project, hopefully tomorrow morning when it's cooler out and not as buggy. I'm going to see if I even need all these strawberry plants because there are quite a few here. And the other thing I noticed with these small little strawberry plants is they actually don't have runners from what I'm noticing. They are bunching. And so that's why you were able to see me just divide the bunches. So there are a ton of plants in here. But I figured let me at least get in here and let me remove all the leaf litter just to expose what I have. And what it also exposed is the fact that I definitely needed to remove the plants from here. Look how low it dipped the soil level. So I'm glad that we are doing this project or that we started it and we made great progress today. Okay, so final recap. We topped off these two beds. We moved the 3 blueberry bushes from this bed to this bed. We moved some of the strawberry plants. They look a little sad right now, but they should bounce back. I will continue digging out more strawberries from this bed and dividing them and moving them into this bed. And if I have more strawberry plants than I can use, I can always add them as part of my backyard plant nursery and sell them there. This bed right here will still get strawberry plants, but those strawberry plants produce a larger strawberry. They're going to come out of this bed here. And also in this bed are raspberry plants. Those will get moved over into this bed. Then I'm going to have to top off the soil in this bed, but it will be emptied out because all these plants will have shifted. I'll top off the soil in this bed, and after I top off the soil in this bed, I will come to this bed and I will dig up the 3 blueberry bushes here. I will dig up all the strawberry plants in here. And again, these are the ones that are the smaller size strawberries. They will get divided. They will get moved in there. Everything will receive fertilizer, water, and that will empty 2 beds for me that are towards the front. This one here, as well as that one there. And what's going to go in these after I top this one off and top that one off will be my anemone and my ranunculus. I have no idea how long all of this will take me, but the big thing is we started this project. I am so excited about that. And now I'm motivated to keep on going with this. And I'm also motivated to keep on going with this during the early hours when those black flies are not out because they are so pesky. I would love to hear from you. Do you have raised beds? Do you have strawberry plants that you're growing? And have you run into the same issue where you put strawberry plants in a raised bed and then the level drops and now you got to move them around? It's not a bad thing because honestly, it's better for strawberries that you move them around anyway every 1 to 2 years. And I want to know, do you have blueberry plants? What are your secrets? Because I do get blueberries, but I want to get even more blueberries from my plants. Please drop a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.